Hi, my name is Greg Johnson with Resources for Life TV at resourcesforlife.com, and this is part 3 in a series of videos showing you how to set up a old used computer with Windows XP. And in this segment of the series, you're going to see some of the initial settings that are really helpful to implement on a new or used computer, whether it's your own or you're doing this for somebody else. So if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch through resourcesforlife.com. I encourage you to go back to the first video, which will be linked in the bottom, and actually these will all be posted on the website on a page, one after the other, so you can follow them in a series if you go to resourcesforlife.com, and the link will be provided down below. So thanks for watching, and here's the video. So as you first log into Windows XP, log in for the first time, the program menu, the start menu, will pop up here. And there are some things that I do to configure a computer. I like to create the quick launch bar down here in the left, so you can do that by just right-clicking the mouse and then go to Toolbars and choose Quick Launch. And so that allows you to put some icons down there in the lower left. The Windows Media Player, I usually go ahead and just delete that from the Quick Launch area, because you'll probably end up with some other kind of player like QuickTime or iTunes to play your music. Then there's this opportunity to take a tour of Windows XP, and for the sake of brevity, I usually go ahead and just click on Play the non-animated version and then click Next, just to get this message to kind of go away. Otherwise it keeps popping up. So then you can go up here and just close out of that. Then you'll notice the trash cans in the lower right. I usually like right-clicking and arranging things by name. And since we're starting, as I said in the beginning, from scratch, there's nothing on the desktop. But typically on a brand new computer from Best Buy or whatever, something you'd get from the store, an HP computer, Gateway, Sony, there'd be lots of icons on the desktop and lots of games. But this is really kind of a clean way to install a computer. And so on here, if you go to the Start menu and look at all programs, you'll notice it's a pretty sparse list. Accessories, games, startup, that's it. Anyway, so to get those icons on the desktop, we're going to do a right-click on My Computer and then say Show on Desktop. And similarly with My Documents, people kind of like to have an icon on their desktop for that, so we can right-click on that and say Show on Desktop. Something else that's handy to have just kind of one click away is found under All Programs and then Accessories, and it's the Windows Explorer, not to be confused with Internet Explorer. And we want to right-click here. I'm going to just right-click as I'm pointing to that, right? And then as I'm holding down the right mouse button, I'm clicking and dragging, and then I'm going to bring it over here and lift up. So I have these options now. Because I did a right-click and drag, I can say Copy here. So I'm going to click on Copy here. And now I have that Windows Explorer, and that is the icon that we'll click on to quickly, get to seeing what's on the system, right? And so it's nice to have that icon down in the quick launch area. I can left click and drag that down here, and you'll see it creates a shortcut to that. So now I can just one click right into viewing the files. So we'll close out of that, and now we're at a point where, okay, the desktop looks all right. We have a few icons here to work with. There's no software on the computer. Helpful to have this, quick launch area. One more thing I'm going to do is I'll right-click on the Start button here and choose Properties from there. And I want to make sure that on the taskbar, if there are some inactive icons that aren't being shown, I want those to be shown. So I'm going to take this check mark away from Hide Inactive Icons, because sometimes there's actually something kind of important that's hidden, and you don't want that to be hidden. Well, what's next? What's next at this point should be going to the My Computer icon and right-clicking, and then going to Properties. First of all, This will just tell you a little bit about the computer to start out. And in this case, the operating system and what kind of processor it has. This is something I want to point out, is that this computer has a processor that's capable of 1.6 gigahertz or 1,600 megahertz, right? Well, it's running at 83. Now that clock speed is probably being misreported, right? I mean, 83, that's from like 20 years ago. But one thing that we do know is that this is a Pentium M, and so it's going to be really heavy on the idea of conserving power. So slowing down the processor whenever possible to conserve battery power. That's probably not really necessary, right? Because we're going to maybe be using it while we're plugged in anyway. So I'm going to go to the control panel, and I'm going to go to printers and other hardware, because that's where I can get completely lost. Okay, that's where I find power options. So I'm going to go to power options, and I want to set this up so that the power management is minimal. That's one of the power schemes. I'm going to choose minimal power management and then click OK, and we can close out of the control panel now. And what we'll see now is if we go back to the My Computer icon, right click, choose Properties again. Hopefully we're going to see, and we don't, we normally would see that the speed has increased at that point. So anyway, I'll have to pursue that later. But it's something to check, and usually that problem would have gone away by now. So another thing that we can do as we right-click on My Computer and then go to Properties is from the tabs at the top, go to Hardware, because you'll want to make sure under Hardware and then Device Manager, you'll want to make sure that all the drivers are installed properly. We'll take a look at this list. That's a lot of stuff that's missing the appropriate drivers: Ethernet controller, multimedia, network controller, etc. And part of that is because we have an older version of Windows XP, so back then, whenever that version of Windows XP came out, it wasn't aware of all of this hardware. And there may now be drivers for those things that would have been included, like in Windows XP Service Pack 3. But that said, we're going to have to go out to the Dell website to get those drivers if we don't have the disk from Dell for the Latitude D600. So at this point, there's kind of a fork in the road. We either have the disk, in which case we use that disk, it's called a resource CD, or we don't have the disk, in which case we have to get to the internet. And if the Ethernet driver isn't working, then we can't get to the internet, so it's kind of a catch-22. You may need to use a USB Ethernet wireless or wired USB Ethernet adapter just to get to the internet to get to those drivers, right? Because there's no other way to get them. Or you could use another computer and do some guesswork that way. Go to the internet, type in that service tag number that I'd mentioned before. We can go to right-click on My Computer, Properties, take a look at the name of the computer again, and you'll see that that number come up again. It was Y, I'm going to zoom in on that in this case, YRPLI1. I can go to Dell's website, type that in as the service tag number, and Dell will give me a narrowed list of guesses about what kind of video card is in here, what kind of Ethernet driver is needed, etc. I'm going to do that in a separate video because that's kind of useful, and we're up to about 8 minutes for this segment here, so that'll have to wait till the next video.